Recording is started. Sync. Wait, let's go 10, 15, 10 seconds. What's going on, folks? It's Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris here again with another Cockpit Conversation. Retired Air Force pilot, mobility pilot, special operations pilot, turned keynote speaker, executive coach, and airline pilot. And I'm here with my main man Dana today to have another Cockpit Conversation. Dana, how you doing today, man? How you feeling, man?
What's happening? It's another day in paradise, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. Another beautiful day to be alive. Exciting to jump into another conversation with you today, man. And let's just real quick start with gratitude, man. Like I always say, it's another great day to be alive, man. And when we're out there, you always ask me about what am I grateful for. What are you grateful for today, man?
Today, I am grateful for um I'm grateful actually for health, but more importantly in this winter time, I'm grateful for a roof over my head and some heat. It's I wanted to go outside and do my walk, but I had to hit the treadmill this morning. It's cold out there.
Yeah, this morning, man, I am. I'm grateful for a roof over my head, man. And I think right now, in the time period that we're in, I'm just grateful for presence. I'm grateful that I'm
Ooh.
in a position to be able to be present for my family in a time where they really need me. And so that's just the thing that jumps out of my head this morning, man, as to what I'm grateful for, man. So let's,
I'm glad you clarified presence with the CE, not presence with the TS.
right. Well, it's so funny you say that. Like, we're in the midst of holiday season. Don't know when folks are going to be watching this, but it's the Sunday before Christmas. And
A mad dash.
it's a mad dash. And but I'm excited to your point about presence with the CE, not presence with the TS. I'm gonna get my daughter one gift card, and when we get off of this recording, I'm gonna go and get her one gift card. My wife and I are gonna give that to her. We're gonna open up gifts. She has more gifts under the tree from other people than she has from us because
Mm.
we give her presents, as in with the CE, and we give her time. Bro, Friday we went and had donuts before we went to school. We did that. Then let's see here. Friday evening we went and saw the Grinch on Ice, or How the Grinch Stole
Ooh.
Christmas with Ice at the Gaylord. And
Uh-huh.
then after that we came back home. We watched some TV. Yesterday on Saturday we sat around. We watched a little bit of TV. We watched one. We watched one particular show. We watched a movie. That whole idea of Netflix and chill. So we watched a movie. Then we got up, got our clothes on. Then we went to the theater. We watched Avatar, the third episode of Avatar. And then we came back and I sat on the couch and I watched a little bit more TV with my wife. And so to me, that's what this is about. And what I'm grateful for is that I've created a life where I can have presence and be there and create those memories and those moments, man. So that's what I'm grateful for, man. So let's get into it. What's on your mind today, bro?
Oh man, let's see. So people that may or may not know, we are blood brothers. I'm big on my middle initial too, so that I have to remember to put my middle initial when we get on Zoom. But that's not what I want to talk about. When I think about our journey as brothers and as professionals in our career field, right? I think it is just totally crazy that in about 10 to 15 days, it would have been 21 years since I started teaching.
Wow.
And so, in 21 years of doing my profession, you going on nearly 30 years of doing your profession, right? We have reached that point in our careers where we realize like we're the old guys now.
Yeah,
So,
man. I mean,
so
I mean, like all that came to mind was, bro, you got old balls and loose skin. But anyway, keep going.
and so with that comes with changes in generation comes a different work ethic sometimes, a different thought process, uh, a different view on how to do the job and things like that. And one of the things that a lot of people ask when you do your Q&O from the stage, right, is they ask you questions geared towards how to bridge that generation gap. And so today I want to talk a little bit about bridging that generation gap. Like me as a veteran teacher, 20 years, there's some things they say you never leave the students alone. I do it every day, man. But it took me 20 years of preparing of how to set a standard as far as what I want from kids. So like right now I have a group of freshmen, a class of freshmen, and then I have two classes of upperclassmen, juniors and seniors. I can leave them all while I go across the hall to go make some copies or something like that, right? And yes, they think different from kids that I taught even 5 years ago. So if we take this towards leadership, trust, and things like that, let's have a conversation about bridging that gap between generations. And maybe you can start with the story of how you talk about there's the group of people that are wondering why does this person always want to text, and this other group of people that says why does this person want to always make a phone call?
Hey, so here's the funniest thing, man. So, um, at that last keynote that we did down at Amelia Island, Florida, a guy came up to me after the keynote because this came up in the Q&O session, questions and opinions for y'all that don't know what I don't do Q&As. I don't do question and answers. I do questions and opinions. Q&Os because I have opinions and not answers. You already have the answer as a person out there living the life that you're living and living your life. And I'm willing to give you my opinion. But with that said, man, from the Q&O, this dude comes up to me and he says, I want to challenge your answer about the generational differences. I was like,
Mm,
talk to me, brother. What's going on? He was like, in my house, I'm the one in charge. I'm the parent. I'm the elder. And when I say something, you do as I say. You just basically shut up and color. And I was like, he was like, and that's how I was raised. He goes, and so what you're trying to tell us is that we should change as the older person in the home and in the workplace. And I was like, you know what, man? I agree with you that I didn't answer the question from both sides. And so I
mm,
said, I will agree and I will agree to disagree with you. And I says, it actually is both sides that need to actually figure out how to work together. But to your point of what you're getting into and what I talk about is in the workplace right now, there are 3 to 4 generations in the workplace. And when we look at those generations in the workplace, what we realize is that they operate and understand things differently. And so if I'm looking at my generation and how I was trained and how I was conditioned when I came into the workforce, it's completely different than the newest, youngest generation in the workforce and how they were trained and how they were conditioned. They have information at their fingertips that we didn't. They don't ever have to go
true.
to a library. But like we had to go to a library, bruh. I don't even know if they know what the Dewey Decimal System is, homie. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's why my students struggle because they don't know the Dewey Decimal System.
Come on, bro. And so we joke about this stuff. But meanwhile, some people in my generation, a generation ahead of me that are still in the workforce, they like Google. What's Google? Chat GPT.
Mm,
What's that? Right. So again, we have this divide and the differences in how we operate. And there is the older generation. They're trying to figure out why that young person doesn't answer that phone call, and they like, why they keep texting me, and what's the text? And the younger person is like, man, would you just text me back, partner? But why you keep calling me? You just don't require a phone call. And
go
so
update
now,
that flip phone first.
come on, but come on, man. Like, yeah, you can't get a text message because you got a 1965 flip phone. But, but like, and we joke about it, but this is real life and reality, man. This is what people are dealing with. They're dealing with the crisscrossing information. And
Hmm.
and and it's this idea that I'm gonna do it my way. I'm not gonna do it your way, and you should change for me. And then the other person said, "Well, no, you should change for me." And it's like, no, how
Right,
about we actually meet in the middle? And so, if I'm talking to leaders, someone who's in a leadership role, at times that tends to be somebody who's of a older generation, right? My generation, or maybe a generation, my generation plus or minus one. And so you can
right,
kind of do the math on the age. I'm not going to try to run the math down, but like when you look at that, typically we are trying to lead those from the youngest generation like a couple of generations away from us. And so what I'm encouraging people to consider is if that is the case, then get to know and understand that person as an individual, not generational specifics, but that person as an individual. Understand who they are, understand how they operate, understand how they communicate, understand what they're thinking, because that is going to help you to actually be better with connecting with them. When you connect with them, you build that relational trust. You start making
Mm,
those deposits and they know that you care about who they are, right? And so you have to start with that. Now, conversely, at the same time, you have to do the same thing for the person who is also what am I trying to say? You conversely, you have to do that for the person that young person. They have to go and try to learn about that person who's leading them as well, right? Understand how
true.
they communicate, and then we can
Right.
figure out how do we meet in the middle. And that's what I'm encouraging people to think about. How do we meet in the middle? And how do we find a common bond, a common language to communicate with each other? That's really what I'm trying to say right there, man. There's like my brain is going crazy, so like I'm gonna let you jump back in with the questions because like literally I'm trying to decipher everything I want to say because there's so much, but I know you got a whole lot more you want to ask me, man.
Well, what you just said makes me think about one of the philosophies that I have, and it's if we combine the wisdom of the older generations with the energy of the younger generations, man, we could change so many things in the corporate world, in the business world, in the family structure, and it would really, really move mountains, in my opinion. And so you have these people like military wise, although I never served, in my opinion, I've been in the military, just in my opinion, right? And I think that people look at the military and they say, hey, this is basically, it starts on compliance. If you go enlisted, of course, it's a different journey if you're going as an officer, right? But if we talk from the enlisted side, like, oh, it's just a compliance, right? Shave your head, come in, do everything we say do for the next 12 weeks, and then we'll send you out here to do the job, right? But can you talk about that a little bit? Because even though you were an officer, right? I remember when you were at the Air Force Academy, you used to go down and train, do basic training during the summers. So how is it really just compliance? Because people always debate, Jason, this is not the military, and if I'm a older uh, person in the workforce, whether it's military, civilian, whatever, I think a certain way. It's kind of like even with Chat GPT and AI right now, like people that want to do things the long way and they want to write down all their ideas and thoughts and then do some research because they
Yeah,
came from
yeah,
the card catalog generation. Like,
yeah. Go ahead.
no, is are we talking about bridging this based upon compliance? Because I don't think that's what it
No,
requires.
nah, man. So I mean, like again, let's define what I mean when I say compliance versus commitment. Compliance is shut up and color, do as I say, not as I do. I've got an open door policy, not for you to come in, but for me to come out and micromanage you, right? And so that is compliance, is just shut up and color. Now, in certain environments, that is necessary, but you got to determine what's the environment. But overall, I want to create a commitment environment for people to know that they're cared for, to know that they matter, to know that they're valued. And there's a way that I could do that. Now, interestingly enough, you brought up a long time ago, as Bernie would say, from when I was at the Air Force Academy, and I went down one summer, the summer I believe of 1999, and I worked at basic training at Lackland Air Force Base for the Air Force. And I was able to have the privilege of helping to put 2.5 flights of airmen through basic training. And what you learn from the good TIs, what you learn from the good leaders and instructors is how do you really train people when you start with this compliance mindset of basic training, military basic training, and then how do
Hmm.
you transition to what comes after that, what comes beyond that. And so what they taught me, it's hard to really articulate, but I'll do my best to try to articulate it in this moment, is when you first get there, you have to build their trust and their confidence in you as their
Mm.
instructor and as their leader. Now, you can just go compliance, 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 shut up the whole time. But if you do it the right way, the first couple of days is I need the compliance because I need you to fall in line with the rules and the structure of the environment that I've created. Okay. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
strip you of who you are as a civilian. We're going to reclothe you in the uniform. We're going to strip you of the way you communicate, and we're going to give you the only way that we're going to communicate within the confines of this environment. And then you have to rely on me, the instructor, to give you privileges and so forth. Now, that sounds absolutely crazy. However, when it's done the right way, what you're able to do is you're able to allow them to understand I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this with a purpose, but I'm also doing this out of care. And I'm going to show to you that I care about you as I'm doing this. And what ends up happening is they build a level of trust. And then you then lean in and let them know why they can trust you. And you begin to share with
Mm.
them, you begin to open up a little bit more and share with them your why and why you're there and why you're working to help them to be better and why you're willing to go beyond yourself to show that you care and that you're committed to them to becoming airmen, to become members of our team, to where they
Mm-hmm.
can go out there and lead people, where they can go out there and take care of people, where they can go out there and get the mission done, right? And not just be the compliance yes person. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you find is that over the course of a couple of weeks is you've built this level of trust with them, and they then begin to reciprocate that back. And there's ways
Mm-hmm.
in this environment that you let them know that you care, you let them know that they're valued. And the more I did that, it became so clear as to how we built that relationship, how we built that relational trust, even though it seemed one way. And at times you would go up to an individual and say, hey, Airman Harris, why are you here? And they're sitting at attention, hey, just relax a few minutes. Tell me, what'd you do before you got here? Oh, well, sir, I
Mm.
was at Yale University. I did 3 years. I couldn't afford to pay for the rest of college, so I enlisted in the Air Force because I wanted to serve and I wanted to get my college paid for. Fantastic, man. Here, check this out. Let me give you a couple of words of advice. Don't ever forget why you enlisted in the Air Force. Make sure that you go back and finish that degree as soon as you're able to, and do your enlistment time, and then make a decision as to if you want to stay enlisted and climb the ranks, if you want to get a commission, become an officer, or if you want to say you did your time, you served the military, and you go off to college, get your degree, and go off and do some great things in industry. And now they're like, wait a minute, this person went from yelling at me or checking me to caring for me and caring about me and asking me who I am. And so when I did
Mm.
that, and I would do that in this environment where a lot of times, because it was a close quarters environment, others would hear the conversation that I was having, and they would lean in and they would be like, "Oh, he actually cares. Oh, like we actually matter to him." And then they
He
would start
gets
at
it.
right, and then I would give them space to say, "What kind of questions do you have for me?" So then, when I needed them to have my back and needed them for me to lean into them for trust, bro, it was easy. So it wasn't just all about compliance. Now, so I need you to know how to do the job. I need you to understand what the rules are, but I also have the ability to consciously and intentionally choose to show you that I'm committed to you, to show you that you matter.
What's cool about this conversation so far is as you were explaining that it makes me think about like the family structure and what comes one of the things that comes to mind is that I think leaders can actually learn about a lot about the difference in the generations based upon how their family environment is. And what I mean by that is, for example, we talk about parenting a lot of times, right? My children are much older than your daughter, but we also talk about the things that I've learned along the journey. And so I believe that sometimes leaders, if they look within their household and their relationship and the things that they do to connect with their children and their significant others, they really can take those lessons and realize that they intersect. Sometimes people try to make business an island over here, professional life and island over here, social life and island over here, when it's kind of like a Venn diagram and they overlap. Like what do you say to that thought process? Like, cuz I don't want my kids just always complying. They're not soldiers. I didn't like that about my upbringing. Like what can we speak on in regards to that?
So you're saying basically the idea that teaching people about how to build trust in the home as well as in the workplace, or is there a different question that you're
Yes,
trying to really
because
get at?
Yes, because for example, the do as I say, not as I do, how we
Mm-hmm.
were raised. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? If you do this or you don't do this, then you know what I'm saying? And versus now the grandparents, right? Because the grandparents are like, wait, you let that child say that? You let that child do that?
Yeah.
And they get
So
to saying, never, I could have never done that, right? And some parents, they think, oh, it's not gonna hurt him. It didn't kill me. Like, but those things
yeah,
overlap, I think, in understanding the younger generations when we're talking about our careers. So for me, I'm able to connect with teenagers because I have two teenagers. You are able to connect with younger pilots, whether it's on the military side of things or the airline side of things, right? So I think that there's an intersection in our family life and the relational trust that we build in our family, as well as the relational trust that we build in our careers.
yeah, I think you're spot on. I think a lot of times we will work harder at building trust in the workplace than we do at building trust in the home.
Ooh,
I'm gonna call it like it is. We will work harder to treat people nice at work than we do to treat people nice at home. And so you gotta consider the things that we learn at home are the things that we will take into the workplace. So how you are conditioning, training, and treating your children will dictate how they show up in the workplace, and what they see, the behaviors from you will dictate how they show up. And so this all of these things starts at home in terms of trust building, in terms of how we communicate with our children, how we begin to build that level of connectivity with them. And so for me, with my daughter, one of the hardest things was for me to allow her to have a why quota. I say it that way because she would ask why. And bro, you remember as kids, man, like what did they tell us? Because I said so. Because I
you're
said
right.
so. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like they like but if my mama told me because I said so one more time, I'd have lost it. And
Yeah.
so when my daughter was born, my wife and I made a determination that we wouldn't lead her with the idea and the mindset of because I said so. So
Mm.
when my daughter asked why, I would explain to her why. Now there were days when she would ask me 100 whys. I'd be like, "All right, you've met your why quota for the day, right?" Um,
Z, baby, Z.
right. But with that said, I had to understand that I get to create the environment for her and
Mm.
teach her how to communicate effectively. Now, but I also demand from her that she always has a why as to why she does something. But that started by saying, let me tell you, when you ask me why, I will give you the why. And if I don't know, I'll
Hmm.
try to figure it out. I'll go get that answer. And then I think the other piece is understanding that in my home, I don't want to build compliance for her because I don't want to teach her a compliance model that I was raised on.
Hmm.
I want to teach her a commitment model. I want to teach her that there is a different way to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that when I lay the law down in my home that she doesn't abide by the law, but notice abide by the law versus comply with the law. That is
There's a difference.
a different way of thinking. And so
Right.
I teach her how to abide by the laws, but the laws are there for a reason. I teach her why those rules, laws are there in our home. Hey, honey, this is the reason why mommy and daddy don't want you to wear makeup until high school. Hey, honey, this is the reason why we don't even think makeup is a great idea. No disrespect to anybody who wear makeup. That's not what Jason said. But you know what I'm saying? Like, but we give her the reasoning behind it. And now she understands what the laws, what the rules, what the regulations are, so to speak, within our home. And then she understands how she can abide by that, and she understands the why behind it. So now I'm conditioning and teaching her to understand how to have her own why, how to create the environment that she needs to create. But then also, there's an expectation that when she goes into the workplace, she'll ask that of the people that she's working with. So now that might become a problem because what if she's working for that person who operates from compliance? So then I have to then teach her how do you get that answer from that person, or how do you manage to build that level of trust? And so it's a whole complex way of thinking and way of raising
Hmm.
my child,
Hmm.
and it's not easy because there's times where I just don't have an answer, and I would love to say I don't know, but I think to what you're saying is we have the ability that we can model what commitment looks like. We can model what respect looks like. We can model what care looks like, what kindness looks like in our home to our children, to our
Mm.
loved one, to our significant other, so that we can then take that into the workplace and create better relationships. Not necessarily
Hmm.
friendships, but relationships in the workplace, so that we can
Right.
build that relational trust that allows us to create that high performance team, that high performance environment.
I think I think oftentimes oftentimes in the workforce, people in leadership positions get frustrated, and then the people that are working under them or with them are frustrated as well. There's one side of it. If you're under 25 in the workforce, right? And you grew up in a home where you were able to ask why, then when you have that self agency and you go into the workforce and you ask someone in leadership and they don't have an answer, there's a frustration that builds. And then the person of leadership, there's a frustration that builds with them because they're so used to compliance. It's like, I don't have to explain it. I'm the boss. And
Exactly.
then that goes into leader, manager, boss. But I want to give the people some takeaways, right?
Yeah,
Because
man.
I think that there's something really, really powerful about where we are in time, right? So we have the wisdom of someone who's been in the career and in the workforce for 15, 20, 20 plus years, but we have the energy and the innovation of people who are fresh into the workplace or fresh into a position. So, what's some takeaways that we can give them on initiating these conversations? Some
Yeah,
people are afraid to initiate these conversations.
yeah. I love what you're saying, man. I say the takeaways. Big takeaway is be willing to ask the question, be willing to get to know the person, be willing to approach, if you're a junior person, be willing to approach that leader and understand them and how they operate. If you're a senior person, be willing to approach that junior person and understand how they communicate and how they operate. And both parties being willing to meet in the middle. And then I think the other takeaway is internally in your home, what are you modeling? What kind of person what kind of character traits
Mm.
are you modeling for the people in your home? And then are you operating at the same level of relationship building in your home as you are in the workplace? So like those are the big takeaways that I would throw on the table right now, man. What about you?
I think when I look at it is be curious.
Mm,
We have a lot of people that struggle with asking quality questions. I like the book from John Maxwell, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And then another philosophy that I live by is be curious before being critical. So sometimes people want to initiate these conversations about this bridge, but they're critical before being curious. And now it's, hey man, I'm such and such from such and such, and they feel like you just try them. And it's like, no,
yeah,
we don't have to get in our feelings about things. So my takeaway is once again, be curious before being critical, because now this opens up, it level sets when you have these conversations and helps you be able to move forward. Because oftentimes people get stuck on the issue. You're my senior, you're senior to me in the organization, and I feel some kind of way because of something you said or did, or because you got upset because I asked a question. So
bruh,
be curious before being critical when you have these conversations, is my takeaway.
bruh. You got the closing takeaway moment. I love it. Be curious before being critical. We'll leave y'all with that. Again, thank you, Dana, for the conversation, man. Thank you for jumping in the cockpit with me. It's another cockpit
Always a
conversation
pleasure.
with Jason and Dana, man. And excited to have you guys on the journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, click the little bell button up top Check out the other videos that we have coming. We're going to continue to produce great content for you guys and share what's on our hearts, what's on our minds. If there's something that's on your hearts and minds, feel free to reach out to us, drop some comments in the comment box. Feel free to shoot us an email, jason@nofailtrust.com, dana@nofailtrust.com. NoFailTrust.com is where you can find us. And if you're interested in getting those 7 skill sets, drop a 7 in the comments and we'll make sure we send the link for the 7 skill sets. Thanks again for joining us on this journey. Blue skies, fair winds, and all the best.
Peace.